Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Adam here, and today I'm going to be doing a video on the Google Pixel XL. This is a phone that probably a lot of you know, because it was the first phone that actually Google made by themselves, because previously they made the Nexus line, and all the other parts of the Nexus line, like the Nexus S and so many other Nexus phones. They partnered with LG, Huawei, and more companies. And so, yeah, this was the first attempt by Google. And so I'm going to be doing a review of it almost or about 4 years later in 2020. Let's get started with the video. So this is the Google Pixel XL variant. And let's start off with the design. As you could see around the back, we have metal on the bottom and glass on the top. And so this actually kind of looks pretty good. I mean, it looks old, but it doesn't look terrible. And it has a really nice build. Feels sturdy in the hand because of all the metal and some glass too. So it feels like a premium device. On the bottom, we got a USB-C port as well as a microphone and a speaker. So it's actually pretty cool that it has USB-C, because this is actually one of the first phones that actually implemented it into their phones, because this was 2016, so this is one of the first, which is pretty cool. So now let's look at the front. This is probably where the Google Pixel XL and the Google Pixel looks pretty outdated. As you can see, we have really big bezels on the top and bottom. Pretty small on the sides though, but not anything super special here. So the display is actually OLED, so it has pretty good colors, and yeah, it looks pretty good. It's also very sharp because it's a 1080p display, so there's no real pixels actually visible on here, so it looks very, very good. The PPI density is well into the 400s and almost 500s, so it looks very, very sharp, clear, and yeah, so the brightness, it gets pretty bright, but there's a lot of glare, what I've noticed, and so it's sometimes hard to read the screen when, there's a lot of glare. But brightness is in the 400 to 500 nits, which isn't terrible, so yeah. Now let's talk about software and hardware. So the software on here is stock Android 10, as you would expect, because it's Pixel software, and so it's made by Google. And so it's actually pretty surprising that this still has Android 10, which is the latest version. Now, obviously, we're getting Android 11 in sometime later this year, but so far, this is the latest up-to-date version. And so, yeah, it's pretty impressive since it's almost like 4 years old. So speaking of software, there's also a lot of software implemented into the camera. And so, yeah, this camera is actually still pretty good for 2020. So, yeah, overall, camera performance is pretty good. It's a 12.2 megapixel main camera with a LED flash, and then a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But here's some photos from the main camera, and overall they look pretty good. There's pretty good colors. Not as good colors as, a flagship phone of this year, but it's still pretty good. So this is another photo sample, and as you can see, there's actually a really good edge detection, from the plants to the background. And overall, the colors look very good. Saturation, it's a little bit oversaturated in my opinion, but overall, it looks like a really good photo. And this picture right here is of the sky. There was a ton of clouds, but it did really well with dynamic range here. I mean, definitely not as good as the flagships once again, but still a good amount of detail and a pretty good dynamic range. Now, since this selfie camera is only 5 megapixels, definitely doesn't have as much detail as the main camera, but overall it looks pretty good. You could actually do lens blur on both the front and rear facing cameras, and that looks pretty good too. but overall detail's okay. It's definitely not as good as flagships, not even close to as good as flagships, but there's still pretty okay amount of detail, just not as good as, the $500, $600, $700 phones. So now talking about hardware, we got the Snapdragon 821 chipset with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage. And so overall the performance is actually okay with many basic tests. And as you can see, running a simple game here is completely smooth. Scrolling around the UI is okay, but there's definitely some stutters and some glitches. Like I've seen a lot of Play Store glitches where it just completely crashes and, kicks me out of it. But overall, scrolling's okay. It's definitely not that good. Compare performance to like maybe an iPhone 6s or something like that, even though they're completely two different softwares. Just expect similar performance to that if anyone's ever had an iPhone 6s and was considering switching to a Pixel XL. There's not that big of a difference between these two. So, yeah. So overall, scrolling's okay. Opening apps, it's fine. But don't expect any crazy gaming, like don't do any kind of Fortnite or anything like that because that won't run that well, but basic tests and something like COD Mobile will run completely fine. So now let's talk about battery, and battery's okay on the Pixel XL that I have. A lot of people have been complaining about the Google Pixel XLs and Google Pixels battery life, but so far for mine it's been fine if you're just doing basic tasks, and for more intensive tasks it's gonna do not that well. Like COD Mobile, it won't do too well with battery, but if you're just doing it for a little while then it should be fine. But really, for a lot of Pixels there's a lot of battery drain. This one luckily doesn't. I'm going to talk more actually about this Pixel because it's actually pretty special. Okay, so now the question is, should you buy this phone? Well, if, you want a phone that has okay battery life, depending on which seller, which I'm going to talk about later, and, if you want an okay camera, a pretty good camera, pretty good design quality, okay screen, except it's starting to look pretty old, but this is an okay phone, and also has USB Type-C, which is pretty modern there. So overall, you could find this phone, the Google Pixel you can find for around, I would say, $50 or $55, which is pretty cheap. And then for the Pixel XL, you could probably get it for $80 to $90, but I'm going to talk about my unit now that I got. So the unit that I got is actually really cool because mine was about $66, and so it said that it was in overall pretty good condition, but it had a light image burn. So I was like, you know what? Let me take the chance, even though I heard that most Pixels are really, really worn out with the battery, and have usually don't have usually have like light burn in. I'm just gonna take the risk because most Pixels have light burn in, but this Pixel, I don't notice any light burn at all. I don't see any burn in. Like, I'm gonna go to a white screen. So yeah, looking at a white background, I don't see any screen. I mean, I might see some, but I do not see any at all. Tell me if you guys can see any, but I personally don't. I think there maybe is a tiny bit of a red tint possibly, but I can't really tell. Like I really do not see any kind of screen burn, which is awesome. So yeah, this overall was a really, really great deal. Now I will leave a link in the description where I got this. There's this seller, a YouTuber suggested to me, I believe Jake Carroll, and he suggested the seller Soonersoft, and just search him up on eBay. Just do seller dash Soonersoft, and then you'll be able to find it. And so then you'll see all of his listings and everything. And he usually sells things with like light screen burn-in or, some sort of issues, but they're usually not that big of an issue. If you guys remember, I was going to review the LG G6, and then I did, but I posted on my second channel. Well, yeah, that actually I bought from Soonersoft. I believe it was for like $32, and the only problem was like a bad ESN. And yeah, I didn't actually see any other problems with it. Actually, no, I believe there was a cracked screen, but overall, since like LG G6 usually go for about $89, that was a really great deal. So overall, just check out Soonersoft. Thanks for giving me this or not giving me this, or thanks for the great deal, because this is really, really great deal. But he also has other Google Pixel XLs that says light burn-in or regular Google Pixels even. So make sure to check that out. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you guys later.